Hello, everybody. Welcome to Quantum Witch Cafe, your safe place to talk about anything fringe, strange, paranormal, UFOs, UAP if you're fancy. Tonight, I am very, very excited to have Ron James on, and he is doing all this cool stuff for documentaries and has a history with MUFON, and he just knows his stuff. So, before we get into that and bring Ron in, what I'm going to do is say hello and thank you to anybody joining live, listening now or later in another dimension, on another planet, wherever you are listening. Thank you so much. Share, like, subscribe. Still trying to get used to saying that. But without any more craziness, I'm just going to welcome in Ron James. Hi,
Hi,
Ron.
how
How are
are you?
you?
Good. Oh, look, I'm orange.
Oh, are you? Well, you don't look orange on my end.
Oh,
So I
okay.
guess, I look like a vampire and you look orange, I guess. So we're the perfect couple, I guess.
Sounds good.
All right. So tell us about yourself. I hate introducing people because it's like reading a bio. I want to hear it from you. Who is Ron James? What do you do? And why are you on the show?
Well, I've been in the video production business for a long time, and so I own a studio and a production company, and I've done work in the music industry for like Guns N' Roses and Smashing Pumpkins and a lot of big bands in concert videos and stuff. I got into the UFO field when I was hired to produce an X conference in about 2007. And I was kind of like, this is the biggest deception being perpetrated on humanity. And I kind of got sucked in and got involved. And so since then, I've gone on to produce hundreds of hours of finished content of UFO related stuff, a couple of featured documentaries. And also, I started MUFON Television, which is an online portal for UFO material. And that's with the Mutual UFO Network. And I went on to later become their media relations director. So I do a lot of work for MUFON.
That's
Then,
amazing.
then, of course, the film that just came out, it's called Accidental
Yeah.
Truth. I worked on it it's got interviews that go back to 2009, but I worked on the film for about 2 years. It's narrated by Matthew Modine. And with the stuff that's happening in the news right now, all these people are in my film. It cracks me up. I mean, Gary Nolan just went on and said, yeah, there's ET, there probably AI at a SALT conference. Then Ralph Blumenthal, who is in the film, broke that story in Debrief about David Grush, the whistleblower. And then Michio Kaku's come out and said stuff. And Tim Burchett, the congressman who is also in my movie, he just came out and is heading up the committee that's going to investigate these allegations. So if you want to see a who's who of what's going on and you want to be brought up to speed about the UFO topic, Accidental Truth is the film that I think is here for the day.
Oh, absolutely. So I watched it before I was getting on a plane like a week ago before like the latest whistleblower stuff happened. So I'm watching it. I'm like, oh my gosh, she has everybody on here. Like Michio Kaku is like he doesn't do a lot, you know what I mean, of interviews. So how did you gather such an amazing group of people to kind of be on this? Is it just because you know every rock star on earth or and they had you got the connections or did you just use your charm to get them to come on?
Well, when I first signed the contract to do the movie, I didn't have Ralph Blumenthal, and I didn't have Michio Kaku, and I didn't have Congressman Burchett, and I didn't have Gary Nolan. And the interview I did with Lou Elizondo was back in 2018, right after all this stuff broke, and I'd just been sitting.
Yeah.
So, I know all these people, and Nick Pope and Richard Dolan and all the guys that you see on like Ancient Aliens and stuff. I know them all, and I've interviewed them numerous times over the years. And so MUFON opened a few doors. They got me in to see Congressman Burchett. And I literally hired Michio Kaku. I flew to New York and I interviewed him and Ralph Blumenthal literally 2 days apart. I rented a studio in New York, and they were just absolutely great to add. And then Gary Nolan agreed to appear because he's friends with James Fox, who's also another video producer in our field, has the Phenomenon and Moment of Contact. And James is a good friend of mine. So Gary Nolan agreed to let me interview him because of that.
Very
So the
cool.
film it started off to be one thing. And even though it's still the same film I set out to do, like if you look at the Post-it notes on my wall that were put up 2.5 years ago, it's still the same film. I just kept making it better and better and getting more and more people. And then it's amazing to me how things are unfolding in such a way this film literally set the table for disclosure. And I've been pulled aside by a couple of people and said, it's because you did this film that nobody else has anywhere to run anymore. There's no more time for double talk. You laid it out. You laid out the case, and there's no time to back off. They're going to have to plow ahead.
Yes, and I do like that you sort of have like you have a very the film, without giving away too much, covers everything. So it covers like nuts and bolts, and then you have some of the more um controversial type people on there, or woo, as people would say. So I like that you didn't just say like this is because MUFON, people associated with MUFON are very straightforward. But I think that you can be straightforward and scientific, but also still kind of say like, hey, like there's some weirdness happening and we should talk about
Yes.
it, you know?
Well,
So
the fact that ETs, little green men from Zeta Reticuli, or whatever you want to say about extraterrestrial physical aliens, they don't answer all the questions and they don't explain everything that we're
mm,
seeing. And so you have to have some forward thinking to be able to examine other possibilities. And there's lots of possibilities as to what's happening. And I personally think that it's a combination of many things.
oh, absolutely. And I think the more that we kind of are learning, more people coming forward, we're sort of realizing that more and more. If you would have just like you mentioned the news now, he's on a major news station talking about non-human intelligence. He's talking about these things could be interdimensional, talking
Mm-hmm.
about maybe some nefarious intent from them, and even if then you have to ask, like, are they actually meaning to harm us? Or are they just harming us because they don't have the same like ethics as us? There's just like more and more questions keep unfolding.
Well, I
Um,
mean, when you say they don't have the same kind of ethics as us, you mean the ethics that enables us to mass slaughter numerous
you're
species,
right.
eat them.
You're
Um,
right.
we better hope they don't have our ethics.
Yo, you're right. You are right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's something I've argued with myself is like we want to anthropomorphize things, but maybe it's just more simpler than that. Maybe they're not as complicated, the others, or whatever you want to call them. So I want to talk about the title of
Sure.
your documentary. How did you come about that, and what does it mean? And you would go into this a lot, in the documentary, in the film. But how did you say, "Aha, this is what I'm calling it," or what inspired your title?
I thought about the title for a long time. It was originally going to be called something like the Elizondo tapes because it was a lot more around Lou Elizondo in the beginning. But in the film, there's a lot of times where I catch these guys saying something that they didn't really mean to say, or when I ask them to clarify something, the truth comes out when it's not meant to come out, and the name Accidental Truth just kind of came to me. I did find out later that there's other products that have been titled with that, so it's not like an original phrase, but it was original to me, and I thought it was perfect because most of the things that come out in the film, it has several very poignant moments where it's clear that somebody said something they didn't mean to say, or that they're saying something that's completely not true. And so the film's called Accidental Truth because the, as I went on to define it, an accidental truth is what happens when circumstances and evidence lead one to a conclusion that was not originally intended to be revealed, and that's kind of what it is. There's a lot of gotcha moments in Accidental Truth.
So I have to ask, and that's all awesome. I want people to watch it, so I don't want to keep saying too much about what I've seen. It's a great documentary, guys. Definitely check it out. But my question is, a lot of people that are in production, like, you know, professionally, already making money, already kind of know everybody, already in the business, are kind of afraid to step out there into stuff like UFOs or the unexplained. You said you worked with some pretty impressive bands and some other, names that are not related to the UFO field or UAP field. But what made you say, like, I don't care, I'm gonna do this? Like, what was your moment where you're like, something has to be done about this secrecy that's happening, or this needs to be exposed? What was your moment, like your motivation? Why do you care? Because you didn't have to, go
Well,
for MUFON Television and all this stuff.
I had kind of a spiritual experience back when I first started doing video production, and I found myself being hired to do things that I just didn't really care about doing. And so it was early on in my career that I decided I was going to start using my media capabilities to make productions that actually cover things that matter. And so Life After Death, the UFO topic, and delving into the very nature of reality has been the theme of most of my original work since then. And there's been a lot of stuff. And so that's what happened is I just sort of made that decision. And then shortly after making the decision, I went to the International Conference of Science and Consciousness, and this was years ago. And I interviewed like Bill Tiller and Russell Targ and Amit Goswami and Dean Radin and
Wow.
all these big scientists. And I sat on these until about the time The Secret came out. And then I realized I'd shot interviews with all these famous people. And so I made the first Bigger Questions series, which was the nature of reality, the psychic matrix, and the fusion of science and spirit. It was a 3-disc set with all those guys in it. And
Oh, wow.
and that was the beginning of doing this kind of stuff. And as far as the UFO topic goes, just seeing these people for the first time at these conferences, I'd always been like, I buy UFO magazine off the rack and read it kind of person. So I was always kind of into it. But when I realized how, I think it's the biggest question facing humanity, it's one of the top 3. And so I just decided that I was going to kind of pursue it and try to get to the bottom of it. And, in the film Accidental Truth, I feel like I've really laid it out for people in a way that it's not sensationalistic. It's not making claims that don't have any evidence. It's not asking you to take anybody's word for anything. It's as if I was an attorney presenting the case for the UFO truth to a jury. That's how I feel the film is. And it's very convincing. And so it took a lot to do it. And I'm really jazzed that at this time, the story Accidental Truth tells is now being told by an intelligence guy. That's what the whole movie's about, is about the lies about these secret programs and what they recovered and what they studied. And now somebody's coming out and verifying it. I wish the
Oh,
whole watch this movie, not for the money, but just because anybody that wants to know about the UFO thing, and even if you're an expert or just somebody who's casually interested, spend 90 minutes watching this film, and you're going to understand what's coming out in the news.
yeah, I think it's kind of funny because I saw it. I went, out of town for the weekend, and I missed, the news dropped on a Sunday for the Grushes, being the whistleblower.
Yeah.
I didn't see it till, Monday night when I was waiting for a red-eye flight. It was kind of funny that I watched your documentary and I was like, "This is great." I would tell this would be, something I refer people to watch if they're curious about everything, because it covers everything in the film with reputable people in a way, like you said, is not sensationalized. It's very straightforward, but it's still beautiful to watch, and it's still thought provoking. So I thought that was, and then I saw the, whistleblower, the latest whistleblower, I should say,
Hmm.
right? What were your thoughts when all that hit? Did you, were you in the know of all that? Because you know so many people, or were you just as surprised as a lot of the world when that drops?
Yeah, Ralph Blumenthal's in the movie. He didn't give me a heads up, but um, so I was just as surprised as everybody. And we were at Contact in the Desert when it
Oh,
happened. I
nice.
don't know if you were there, or somewhere else, but so I was around all the UFO community. Richard Dolan was with me. Danny Sheehan was with me. Yeah, Carolyn Corey was with me. Yeah, just pretty much anybody. Linda Walton Howe was there. So we all got the news at the same time, and Alan Steinfeld jumped on and did a quick podcast about it. Uh,
Nice.
I just think I hope more and more people. The film's doing really well. It stayed in the top 20 on Amazon since it came out. I hope it gets the attention and more people watch it. We're getting ready to promote it, and lower the price just because of this. It's on sale now at Amazon, and it's not because we lowered the price because we're not selling enough copies. It's been doing great, but I want more and more people to be able to afford to watch it. So it's like $2.99 on sale right now.
Wow. You cannot rent a lot for $2.99 nowadays, so that's really cool. Yeah, I can't imagine being around all those people. I didn't make it to Contact in the Desert. I was out of town for a wedding, but um, I can't imagine being around like those names in this field, just learning about this, because people will say, "Oh, we knew all that anyway," but it's different. Like, this is somebody going on record, and this is they're
Mhm.
using their rights as a citizen to say, like, "This is wrong." and I
Yeah.
was retaliated against, and this is what's happening behind everybody's back, you know?
And
So
Congress really wants the answer. I have a video that I haven't released yet. I'm going to try and do it next week, of me sitting in Congressman Tim Burchett's office talking to him about the whole history from Roswell forward. And so he knows this stuff, and he knows it before me. And he's in charge of this committee that's going to be investigating Grush's claims. And I can tell you that there's people in Congress that know that this is true already. And so it's not like this guy's making it up. The whole film is about what he has revealed, and the facts behind it. And Congress is not happy. And people like Tim Burchett, this guy is dedicated to the truth. I know him personally. I would call him a friend, and he's a good guy. And the fact that they put him in charge of this, he's a bulldog when it comes to this topic, and he is not going to back down.
yes, his passion's amazing when it comes to, you can tell he cares. You can tell also, I feel like from when we've seen him earlier on to now, you can kinda tell that this has created, like, a little bit of, like, an urgency and, I don't wanna say heaviness in him, but you could tell, like, you said, you're an open person spiritually, like, you can tell when somebody shifts.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell the look in their eyes. You could tell something has happened, and whatever he's oops, we lost him.
Sorry.
Alright. Oh, there you are. I was like, "He disappeared." Okay. I think we're good.
Yeah, I'm using my phone for this, and unfortunately, it just rang, and there's no way to stop that from happening without
Oh,
killing
yeah. Well,
the
hopefully you're not too popular tonight, right? You get all these calls.
phone.
But, yeah, so you can tell that he's taking this seriously and that he actually has done the homework, it was kind of a lot of us were sitting back when we saw, like, the hearing and nobody knew anything about Mount's Rum when they were questioned about it and
Mhm.
about, Wilson Davis memo when they were asked about it. Like, it was a lot of people take for granted that, like, yes, there has been studies in the past, right? But this is actually, I think this is bigger than anything else that's been done in the past because it's so public and because people are just talking about it openly now. Like, they're not hiding, it's not on a tabloid. I mean, the tabloids take it up too, but, um, you know, it's just, I think it's like UAP history, and you said that this is one of the top 3 questions facing humanity, so now I had to ask, what are the other 2 top questions that you think is facing humanity at the moment?
Well, as far as us as a species and as uh, a living generation of humans, I think it's the life after death question, the nature of reality. Are we living in a simulation? And the ET question. I think those are the 3 biggest ones. And if you look at the body of my work, I'm always addressing one of those 3.
Yes, and you said a lot of this was triggered, by a spiritual experience. Now, you don't have to talk about it, but I'm gonna ask if you feel, comfortable sharing any part of that. Part of my quantum witch cafe is, I'm kind of in between this science and this witchiness, and to me, like, they're gonna come together, as you said earlier, to explain a lot of things. So, do you mind sharing anything about that, or is it too personal?
No, I don't mind sharing it at all. When I first started my video production company, I was in Florida, and I'd get hired all the time to, like Discovery Channel would come to town, and we get to help them, and it wasn't very satisfying. And one weekend, it was spring break weekend, and I was working helping out in Panama City. And one day I worked with MTV Spring Break, and then the guys had the Girls Gone Wild bus, and I was helping them. And I, people are like, oh wow, that must have been pretty fun. It's fun for about 5 seconds until you realize that you're watching young women make stupid decisions that they're going to have to live with for the rest of their lives. And it's like, you really want to do that? That's not going away. And so I came home feeling very empty from that shoot. And I was like, this isn't why I got into video production. And it was then that I found an article by this guy, Peter Gersten, who used to run Citizens Against UFO Secrecy in UFO Magazine, talking about how, the nature of our reality and that we could be living in a simulation. And this was way before the Matrix and all this stuff.
Hmm.
And it just fascinated me. And I was like, this is the kind of stuff I want to make, I want to do. And so the way the universe just laid out this trail of breadcrumbs for me, and the fact that I kind of that it wasn't like a major spiritually transformative wake up and see a beam of light and all of a sudden you're a different person. It was more gradual, but it came from a decision that I didn't want to be a part of this media machine that's doing nothing but dumbing people down, and that I wanted to use my media for something that was going to cause, that make a difference, and give people the opportunity to think about stuff. And so I went right after.
He's popular, guys. He got another call.
Right after that, I found the International Conference of Science and Consciousness, and I just um, went there and did all those interviews, and that's where I met all these people that took me in a whole completely different direction.
Sorry about that, guys. We having tech issues. Computer wasn't connecting, so.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, no worries, really. You're here. That's all that matters.
Yes. I wish I could figure out what's going on with my other computer so we could just be online. But okay, well, this is good.
Yep, we can hear you. You're back, so that's good news. So you had this gradual realization that there's like, what's been being pushed out to the world and people, are it's kind of just like meaningless. And you were started sort of researching and talking to these people that were into the more meaningful aspects of humanity and probably the universe as a whole. A lot of people report having, these telepathic experiences with these craft or with these beings. And a lot more people are saying like consciousness is kind of like the key to all of this, because the way
Yes.
that these beings and these craft present themselves is not consistent.
Hmm.
And people, so what are your thoughts on the role of human consciousness in connection to this strange UFO phenomena or any other phenomena you feel like talking about?
Well, I think one of the lessons that we should be learning from this is the very nature of our reality. If you look at simulation theory, which I happen to subscribe to in great part, even by the most basic laws of physics, we're living in a simulation. And when I say that, what I mean is let's take two things that science will not disagree about. And one of them is that this table you're sitting in front of is not really there. It's an illusion of matter being created by energy vibrating at a certain frequency. Our brain interprets this and gives us the reality of a table, but it's not really there. Um, and then when you look at the actual universe itself, the entire thing is run by very simple algorithms: Fibonacci sequence, pi, um, and so when you look at sacred geometry, same thing. It's all math. It's all very simple algorithms repeating that actually make physical reality work. And so, by its very nature, it resembles a simulation, which is just absolutely fascinating. And so, when you extrapolate that into, well, if we're in a simulation, then we have consensus reality, which is the world that you and I are living in right now, that gives us green grass and blue sky and the ability to sit like we're sitting. That's what I call consensus reality, what most people call that. That's the reality that we're all agreed basically that we're living in. But then we have subjective reality, which is, how much of this reality can be changed on an individual basis. And when we see these things, like one person can see a seagull flying by, another person can see a flying saucer. And the idea that they could both be correct is something that people are going to have to get used to, because subjective reality plays a big part in this. And that's why I think we see so many variations. I mean, a friend of mine gave me a chart the other day of UFOs, and it's like where he'd drawn pictures of them. There's hundreds, if not thousands,
Yeah.
of different kinds. Um, and so, what would be the answer to that? That there really is that many different kinds, or that people are seeing and perceiving things in a personal way? And so, I think one of the things that the lessons to be learned from this phenomenon unfolding is that we're living in a reality that we don't understand. Our concept of space and time and dimensions, we have absolutely no clue at this point, and it's offering us clues to help us puzzle this out.
Yes,
That was a
that's a
mouthful,
great.
huh?
No, that's a great answer. No, you're speaking my language right now. I always have to get weird with people, so I was like, I know you're here to talk about the film, but
No,
I
because
like to get
film
more
scratch.
of people. Yeah. I like to get more of what people feel about this, what they think about this on a personal level, because it is very personal. Like you said, it's a big thing that humanity is facing. And simulation theory is like, it's funny because last night I couldn't sleep and I was actually reading, you know, about that because I'm kind of working on like a solo episode and it has a lot of consciousness stuff in it. So I
Mhm.
was like, woke up at like 2:30, couldn't go back to sleep, and I was like, I'm just gonna research and write for like 2 hours. So that's what I did. I'm like, why am I reading this in the middle of the night or early in the morning? Because it's interesting and because it has, if you're human, we don't know what we're dealing with at all. Like, not even
No,
just with non-human intelligence, right? Just on a regular level. Like, there's so many things that are embedded within our reality that we don't
and
even think about.
lately I've just been kind of wrestling with free will or the illusion of free will, and it led me to some very interesting ideas.
Yeah. Would you like to share the ideas, or are you still putting
Sure,
them
sure.
together?
No, I think I could talk about it, and it's not like I came up with this myself. I'm not a scientist or even a prophetic thinker, but in my own thoughts about it, I'm kind of the mind that we have this combination of free will and illusion of free will. And I think that at very key points, we make certain decisions, just like if let's compare it to a video game. You're walking down the road in the video game. You have to choose whether you're going to turn right or you're going to turn left. When you turn right, the video game is going to provide you with the reality that's in alignment with that. If you turn left, the same thing. And this game engine knows how to render exactly what you need to see, hear, and feel to make that happen. So, um, but imagine if we are in some sort of a simulation and that it is run by the same kind of algorithms that make a video game possible. It would be very, very, very difficult for any kind of program to immediately compensate for every split second decision of 8 billion people, not to mention every other living being in the universe, and still maintain a cohesive program. It would collapse on itself. The mathematics to make that work are so infinite that I don't even think we can conceive of how that would function. So I've kind of come to the conclusion that we have certain choice points in our lives where we make major decisions that unfold a predestined eventuality that we're experiencing more than creating, and it's a little scary. It's like
Yeah.
half the time we're on a Disneyland ride, and the other half of the time we're in control. But I don't think that we're as completely free will as we think we are.
Wow, that's very deep, and it can be very scary to some people or exciting depending on if you're that kind of person that's like, I don't want responsibility for any of this. And some people go through things that they don't want to go through. So this can kind of help that. But I love that theory, and I've heard similar things. And these theories could be out there, but sometimes the way a person will say it, the way they explain it, it's going to make sense to some particular people.
Well,
So
what really got me thinking is, I was reflecting on my life and I've done a lot of stuff. And, I remember doing it, but I don't really remember this process that led me to doing it. So in other words, like I built a studio a couple of years ago, a new studio, and I designed the whole thing. It's a from the ground up. It's got video walls and I built the video walls and I did all the wiring and I did all the technical work to build the studio. But I have no idea how I knew how to do that, and I have no idea what got me to. I mean, it was like almost like I was on autopilot the whole time, and I've been looking back at accomplishments, and the part that actually formulated it, made the decision to do it. I'm not consciously aware of having done that. It's like I just did it. I know I did it, but I don't remember. I remember doing it, but I don't remember figuring out that I was going to do it and figuring out how I was going to do it. It's almost like these things happened on a subconscious level and then materialized into the world. And it really got me thinking about this whole free will thing, because if you've experienced something, but you don't really understand how it originated and how you came to do it, you just know that you did it. That starts to make you ask some pretty wild questions.
yes, especially if you're somebody that is an experiencer, right? Depending on the type of experience with UAP, UFO. they might wonder, how did this even happen, right? So
Hmm.
things like that, you'll hear all sorts of different accounts from people. The beautiful ones, right? Where they're just like, these are my spirit guides, and I was
Right.
taken in this, ecstasy, beam of light. And then there's the ones where like I couldn't breathe, my body was paralyzed, I was in pain, it was scary. I woke up in the forest or somewhere, or I woke up, in my backyard. In some instances, it's scary, right? So it really makes you think like what sort of decisions have led to certain types of experiences, right? The more harrowing ones or the ones that people want to have over and over again.
Well, I think that there's different forces at play here and different reasons. A lot of people say that there's a genetic program, a hybridization program, where some species is taking humans for their DNA and tracking people and tracking families. And then there's others that say there's a benign species full of love and grace that wants to see humanity evolve into galactic citizens. And so different people are having different experiences based on, whatever forces they're encountering. And I think that experiencers are about to have their day. That for so long it's been just putting people down and making them out to be crazy. And I think that's shifting. Ralph Blumenthal just came out with a book called The Believer, about the work of John Mack, who was the first Harvard psychologist to actually endorse that something is real happening, something real is happening to these people. Um, More and more research is coming out that there is something to the experiencer phenomenon, and that they're not insane and they're not crazy. And so there's going to come a day, just like how UFO people are all like, yeah, finally, after all this time, we're being taken seriously. The same thing's going to happen to the experiencer community. They're next, and they're going to be able to come forth and not be ashamed of the things that have happened to them and scared to talk about it. That's all going to change.
This is true. And can you hear me okay? I got a message on my computer saying that my mic was unplugged.
No, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I didn't know. Sometimes my computer does weird things. It's Weird Computer Day. So where I have that same feeling with experiencers. This is kind of just like a primer for a lot of people. A lot of people are getting more and more comfortable talking about this. It's not so out there. I mean, I still meet people that joke, right? They're like, oh, well, the tinfoil hat jokes, the jokes from like the
Sure.
90s that people would tell, like, it's not even funny anymore. Like, I actually encountered that a few weeks ago at a barbecue. And she's like, oh, so like tinfoil hat. And I'm like, notice nobody's laughing, but so I just kind of like
Those guys
ignored
are
it.
all on the wrong side of it. And yeah, I just did an interview yesterday for a big, it's my first national TV news interview, and the guy was a skeptic, and he said he's a skeptic. And I'm like, you're on the wrong side of history, man. It's the way this thing's going to
Right.
play out. Um, I'm not going to try to convince you, but I can tell you, like, watch my movie.
Right. Yes.
But besides that, the people that have been saying this all along, for one thing, we were right, and we've been right all along, and now it's being proven. It's a great day.
Oh, absolutely. Especially like I said, the watching your movie and then more news coming out like this was just so insane to me. It was just like perfect timing because I had the link from for a while, but I don't like to watch it too early because then I feel like I want it fresh in my brain when I talk to the person. So, and also I have small kids. I wanted to watch it when there was not people running around and needing me. So,
Yeah,
so
it's not it's a little dense of a film. It's not one of those things you can watch and multitask. You gotta have to pay attention to almost every line.
So where do you think, I have a few questions, but I'm going to save them for the last 15 minutes from the chat, if
Okay,
that's okay.
sure.
Where do you think is going to be the next big step as far as kind of more the government disclosure process goes? What do you think is going to happen next? Do you think they're going to be able to get the information that they want to study what needs to be studied?
Well, MUFON has been behind the scenes in Washington for quite a while, and I personally have been to Washington and talked to several politicians. I had lunch with Andre Carson, who led the first hearing, about 3 or 4 months ago. For an hour, I sat next to him, and there was no stone left unturned in the conversation. So these guys know, and they've been briefed in classified briefings, and they know more. But what's unique is that we have this Defense Appropriations Act that has a clause in it about whistleblower protection for people who know about the UFO thing, to enable them to come forward legally. And what is happening, and I know it's literally happening as we speak, is that they're working out the legal logistics of this. You know, what can you come forward to? Can you come forward to a Senate Intelligence Committee, or can you call a press conference at the National Press Club? And as soon as they get this all worked out, so these people know that they're going to be protected if they come forward, we are about to have an avalanche of people from inside these back engineering programs, from crash retrieval. It's going to be an army of people that are coming forward, and they might not be able to tell the public much, but they're going to be talking to Congress, and they're going to be doing it legally. And this is the next step. And I imagine somewhere in the mix, we're going to get some sort of acknowledgement of life, probably on Mars. So some NASA's just going to say, "Oh, look, we found microbes," you know, just to prime the pump a little bit. But the whole thing's a dog and pony show. This is
Yes.
Film talk about how it's a new narrative. It's like, you know, the powers that be who are guarding this information, and I don't think there's that many of them, are like, well, you know, we're going to have to let people know about this stuff sooner or later, but we got to cover our butts for all the horrible things we've done for 100 years. So that's what we're seeing. Let's invent a new story. Let's pretend it just started in 19 or 2004 or whenever, and let's act like we're all discovering this together. And it's a big lie, but at least it's getting us closer to the truth.
A big thing that was in legislation for, you know, the NDAA 2023 was that historical cases would also be looked into. So
Yes.
since Grush has mentioned, and a lot of us that have done research realize that these things are compartmentalized in different pieces of the puzzle, maybe lying in different agencies and cabinets and wood drives, you know, it's scattered everywhere. So how do you think, are we going to be able to get, say, you know, everybody's talking about, you know, the Mussolini 19, you know, oh my gosh, my brain's leaving me, but the Mussolini case from Italy, and it's in the 1930s. So how do you think older cases like that are going to play into all of this? Do you think that it's going to be, you know, challenging for them to get a confirm or deny on stuff like that? Or do you think that it's there?
Yeah. It's going to be pretty challenging. MUFON was involved in the wording for that. The date was all the way back to 1947, and we fought to have it changed to 1945. And the reason we did that is because we didn't want the year of Roswell to get mixed up in it's from 1947, not including 1947. So we got to change it to 45 because there's a couple other incidents that happened you know, prior to Roswell, and we wanted to make sure Roswell didn't get messed up. So that's an example of the work that we've been doing in DC, and something that I can point to specifically that we did. The Mussolini thing, you know, it's partially been debunked, but you just don't know. And the problem that we're facing now, and what I realized when I was making the film, is that these guys have no trouble destroying evidence. And the amount of people who know everything about the topic then and sits on top of all the compartments and knows where the different pieces of the technology have been sent. These guys are probably few and far between, and they might not even be alive anymore. And there's no institutional memory. And so as hard as it is to believe, some of this truth may be gone forever. And that's a bitter pill to swallow. But I'm afraid it's looking more and more like that. Some of that might be the case.
Yeah, it's very scary to think about, especially when you think of, you know, crash retrievals, or, you know, they're saying even sometimes they land and there's no biological entities within the craft, but sometimes they're saying there is. Like, it's very scary to think about the beings that may have been inside these that were recovered, dead or alive, and what the last days of their life looked like here. It's very scary to me, and it's very heartbreaking to think that something, just if it crashed here, you know, kind of got stuck here with the way that people treat foreign beings, even from the Earth, right? Like, we can't even handle somebody coming in from another country sometimes, let alone another solar system or dimension, you know? So,
well, you know, it all boils down to humanity and our evolution. We have got to do better than we're doing, or we are destined to completely self-destruct. When we're being offered the opportunity to become galactic citizens, we just have to evolve to the point where we're not dangerous to ourselves and others. And I think that there's probably some sort of group of cosmic civilizations that form some sort of federation that have allowed us to self-determine, and that's what we're seeing. But we're failing the test right now, and they're not going to come help us. They'd like to see us succeed and not self-destruct, but they're probably not going to let us nuke the planet. And they're probably not going to come to our aid if we are committing mass suicide. So it's a very interesting position to be in, and I wish more people were paying attention.
Yes, and also be open to that, because we hear the history about like these craft visiting nuclear facilities. Malmstrom's probably the most talked about, correct? So,
Oh yeah.
but I can't see, and now people will use that against you, right? They'll say like, oh, well, they see us blowing ourselves up. Aren't they doing something? It's like, why should they do something? But then
No, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. We have to take responsibility for what we're doing to each other on this planet, and hopefully, you know, that some sort of realization that like you're not alone helps us for the better, and doesn't put us into like defend from the ETs mode, like some horrible like sci-fi movie.
Well, you know, Dr. Greer, Stephen Greer, is concerned about that. He thinks that we're being brainwashed against the entities that he don't mean us any harm, but we could force them into having to defend themselves. I'm not 100% on board with that, but it's a very good point.
Yes, definitely. And he just had a really long press conference last week. So that had, you know, a lot of people get angry at Greer, but I tried to watch it with like, you know, without my own ego being involved, and to be like, just listen and don't like put your feelings into it. You just have to listen to the facts, right? You know, there's a difference between like letting your emotions rule and your discernment rule. So that he definitely had a few good points in there, and it wasn't as horrible as I thought everybody said it was going to be.
You know, I'll tell you a little bit of something. This is pretty funny. You know, my production company, he hired us years ago when Sirius came out to run his red carpet for his premiere. So what that involved was, you know, bringing out the cameras, bringing out the live streaming equipment, setting up the red carpet, setting up the lights, and then me on camera interviewing all the people involved with the film. And then he just hired me again and again and again. And I'm actually doing the one, I've done all of his films so far, and I'm doing this one on July 8th at LA Live in LA. And it's funny because we have two films. There's three top UFO films right now. It's mine and two that he's involved in. And so technically we're competing in the marketplace, but I'm still doing this red carpet for him. I think that's just kind of cool. I mean, like I said, people have different opinions about Dr. Greer's work, but I think that that I don't mind popping in and being the one that interviews him when his new films come out. I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, he definitely has a place in all this, just as so many people do. I have a few questions in the chat, and so this one is from Barry, and Barry asks, are there any government intelligence people who spoke to you off the record but refused to be in your film? I guess that's a yes or no. If it's yes, that's it, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of people I wanted in the film. There's Eric Davis. There's Hal Puthoff that I wanted. There, you know, Colonel John Alexander is in the film, and this guy, you know, I just interviewed him 2 days ago. He was in Sedona for an event, and he came to my house, and I'm like, John, you know, you've been towing this line for all these years, but now it looks like all the things that you've been denying might turn out to be true, and you would know. And he's like, well, I didn't know. So, and I can tell you that Gary Nolan pulled me aside and told me that yes, there is craft, and that he was offered the chance to see it, but that he hadn't done it yet. Lou Elizondo, you know, pulls you aside and tells you things sometimes. So yeah, I mean, I know some things, but I couldn't prove them, so I didn't want to put them in the film.
Yeah, so you did a great job in the film, but just kind of relaying like facts as they are, but also telling a story with it. And that's hard to do because sometimes people tell too much story, and then the facts are kind of like woven in, and you can't tell the difference between like the production value and the story that are the facts that actually happen. So I think yours is that perfect balance where you've got these people speaking about things that they know about, but it's not just like over sensationalized, which we talked about earlier.
Yeah,
Curious,
thank you. I'm glad you saw that.
I watch a lot of like UFO stuff. Even if people say like they didn't like the film, I still watch it because it's still UFO related. And sometimes there's something in there that somebody didn't talk about that they should have or they didn't notice. This is just a comment. It said, I heard a case where a family in a car noticed a craft above them, took a picture, and the picture only showed a small orb and not what they saw. And that's kind of what you were talking about, right? With how we're interpreting like the information that they are presented as, or maybe just as they are, and then our brain kind of tweaks it to something familiar. How do you think instances like this occur? How does somebody see a triangle and take a picture of like a dot?
Well, you know, photographic equipment, digital equipment is going to see constantly sees something different than the mechanism of the human eye, and so it's quite possible that this was, you know, a small craft that was actually able to project the image of it being a bigger craft, but that projection might not show up on film or on digital recording. So, you know, it's just another one of those mysteries.
Yeah, for
But it's
sure. I had an instance where like my EMF meter was like going nuts, and it's never done it in this part of the area. Like, and I've tried to like make it go off in that same area, but this was back when I was doing like the heist or the CE5, you know, I was trying to communicate, right? So I had my little camera going and it was just in the sky because sometimes like you go back and look and there's weird things. But my thing's going off and then there's like a little like weird like peanut shaped looking balloon thing, but it changes. And I'm like, is that balloons or is that? So I'm trying to see it. I didn't see it with my eyes, but it's in like the video. And a lot of people have videos like that where they're just filming while they're doing these meditations, and they had to actually slow it to see if there's something going on in the film. It's really interesting how like a camera might see it, but our eyes don't. And sometimes our eyes see it, but the camera won't see it. It's just all a mind. It's just crazy. It reminds me of Messengers of Deception by Jacques Vallée. That whole book just makes me, I go back to it over and over again because I'm just like, we don't know because there's so many different cases and they're all different. So,
yeah.
So we are coming up on 47 minutes. And this is usually when I kind of ask the guests, you know, what do you want to talk about? Is there anything right now that we didn't cover that you're like, I want to talk about this, or people should really know this about this film or this topic or these crafts? Is there anything that we missed today that you want to talk about?
Well, one thing I would like to mention is that a lot of the animations in the film are original animations. So there's some stock footage in there, but the crash scene reenactments and stuff we did as original pieces. And I designed the shots and I picked out the models, and then I put together an animation team in the Ukraine. And this was before the war started. And then when the war started, these guys were doing the best they could to soldier on. One of them had to take 6 months out and go off and fight in his civil defense thing. And I didn't know if he was dead or alive for 6 months till he came back. And the other guy was, sometimes he'd send me like finished images, and then sometimes he'd send me a video of a missile flying over his house. And ultimately, his computer got blown up because of a power surge caused by a Russian missile strike. And so I've been selling T-shirts and stuff on the website to try and help these guys buy some new equipment. So we've been able to make some small donations, and that helps. But the heroes of the film production for sure are these guys that hung in there when things were going very, very badly. And so you know, hats off to Sergey and Dennis.
Yeah,
Ukraine.
that's amazing. Yeah, I noticed that animation. It's not one that I've seen before because, you know, there's a few floating around that you see all the time. So yeah, that was awesome. I was wondering like if you had somebody do that, because I noticed stuff like that. It really enhances the story, and it wasn't like over the top, like, you know.
I did. Basically, I learned Unreal Engine just for the purpose of doing this. And then are you in front of your computer right now?
Am I in front of it? Yes, I am.
If you were to do a Google search right now for Accidental Truth T-shirts, you will see that my T-shirt design is being stolen by thousands of people on the planet trying to sell T-shirts. And there's one place to get the real T-shirt, and that's to go to the film's website. Okay. All this other stuff is bootleg, and it just blows me away that people are doing that.
There's a lot of that out there. People stealing other people's art, and it's very sad. But I do have your website linked in the description.
Oh, cool.
So people can go there, and from there they can find everything, right? So
Yeah, we've got a few of these movie posters that are autographed by me and Matthew Modine. We've only got 200, so there's cool stuff there on the website. Plus, there's going to be some bonus content and all kinds of interesting things.
okay.
Amazon has the film on sale right now for $2.99, and again, that's not because it's not selling. It's because we want everybody to be able to see it. And so I've actually gotten emails from people that didn't want to spend $5. I'm like, okay, we're going to put it on sale for a week and let everybody have a chance.
That's awesome. Definitely go check that out on Amazon, guys, because it's, even if you know kind of like the history of it, it's nice to watch it all again. And I liked a lot of the footage that I saw of Michio and Lou that you're not going to see anywhere else because it's your footage. It's not a repeat from somebody else's. So
Yeah, these
it's
are
footage.
all fresh. Even Christopher Mellon, the Undersecretary of Defense, even though he's on there in a Zoom call, that was my interview with him. And so this isn't stuff that I just got somewhere. I went out and shot these things.
Yeah. I was like, some of the stuff that I was watching Michio and Lou say, I was just like, wow, like I haven't heard this before. Because if you're anybody that's into disclosure, you tend to watch like, oh, so and so did this interview, like I'm gonna watch all their interviews, or maybe that's me being obsessive, but but yeah, like Michio is one of my favorite people because he's so open to everything, and he's also open to the multidimensional aspect of it, which isn't
Mm-hmm.
talked about seriously enough, interestingly, because there is a lot of physics that talk about it, but but most people are like,
It really
that's too
is.
much for them. It's too scary for them, right? Why do you think
And
that
so
is?
what we did, we took these reports from the Defense Intelligence Agency about different technologies, and I sat him down and we went over each one of them. It's like, well, so what about, trans warp drive? Is that possible? Because here's the Defense Intelligence Agency writing about how it may be feasible. And then he chimed in and let us know what the science is behind some of these things that the government is studying that they're not admitting.
Yeah, that's another thing that you did great in the film is if you talk about something, like you're showing it as well, like with the document or with a visualization. So a lot of people overlook that. They just want to hear somebody talk for 2 hours. That's fine. But if you're somebody, with like a short attention span or somebody new to this field in general, like your film is perfect for that. So yeah, where are you going to be next? Are you doing any conferences or anything like that? Or you have anything new coming out besides promoting this?
Well, I'll be promoting this for a while. I'm going to be at the
Oh,
Roswell UFO thing the first couple days of July,
oh,
and then
cool.
I'll be in LA with Dr. Greer doing promoting his movie on July 8th, and then I'm going to be at Jimmy Church's event at the Luxor. I think that's in September or something. I have to look at it, but yeah, it's been a lot of traveling around, and I'm trying to squeeze in a trip to Washington D.C. because I really need to get over there and stay up to date with my political connections there and what's happening. MUFON's really big in DC. Are there any more audio questions?
I don't see any more. I'm trying. I was starring them as I go. I'm gonna see if any more popped in. Oh, and George actually linked your linked accidental truth in the chat, so that's good. I don't see
Oh,
any
thank
more questions. Yeah, George has been on top of it. He always puts like the links in and everything. So you have the link there in the chat from George. Thank you so much, George, for doing that. And yeah, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about tonight before we wrap up?
I'm not too familiar with your show, but I know you're talking about EMF. I've made a couple documentaries about ghost hunting. I made one called Dead Whisper. That was like the first documentary about EVP.
Oh,
So I dabble in a couple of these fields. So I've done 3 ghost documentaries. I've done Dead Whisper, Ghost Asylum is mine, and I did another one with Amy Allen from the Dead Files that's not released yet. It's called Haunted Desert, and so I like to play around in those. I think my next
that's
movie
awesome.
is actually going to be about life after death.
Oh, very
I've
cool.
done the video production for the International Association for Near Death Studies. A couple of years, and I have interviews that I'm sitting on with all of the big people in the field, and so I'm going to combine traditional ghost hunting kind of flavor EVPs and weird pictures and psychic mediums,
Very cool.
haunted places. I'm going to combine that with the near-death experience phenomenon and the big people from that field, and then I'm going to top it off with scientists talking about the hard question as to whether or not consciousness survives death, and I'm going to put all three of these elements into one film.
Very cool. I love that too. You guys will have to reach out to me when you put it out, because I ghost hunting is kind of like something I want to do more of, and have more people on to talk about like the paranormal when it comes to like the spirit world. So my channel, it's a lot of UFO stuff, but I like all weirdness. Anything weird that you wouldn't talk to your conservative grandma about at the table, come talk to me
Well,
about
I think
it here.
the understanding that it's all connected is upon us.
Yes.
And
yes.
People ask about that, and it's like, well, what do you mean? A spiritual experience where you see an angel is not the same thing as seeing a demon, and it's not the same thing as an alien. And I'm like, well, okay, let's think about this for a minute. There are mechanisms within the way reality works that make these things possible. And so while you might argue that a certain experience is not similar to another experience, the mechanisms that make them possible are probably interrelated. And so it's not so much that if you see an alien or an angel that you're seeing the same thing. I think it's more that what makes it possible for you to see an alien or an angel might be some of the same things within the framework of consciousness. So it's an important distinction when people are saying that all these paranormal things are related. The question is, they may be, but how? And that's where you get an answer that makes sense. Because when you start trying to compare the purpose of these things, like, well, Bigfoot can't be related to the devil I saw, well, maybe what made it possible for Bigfoot to appear is the same thing that's making it possible for that demonic encounter you had to happen. But it doesn't mean Bigfoot and demons are the same. And so when people start talking about it all being interrelated, that's an important distinction that helps make that statement make more sense.
Yes, and a lot of people will say like they have one experience with one type of being or something, right? And then next thing you know, they're having other experiences with things that are different, but it's all related. And I think the show Hellier really got into that. And a lot of people were uncomfortable with it because it was so many different things. And I'm not sure if that's because people just have this inherent need to compartmentalize things. But those of us that have been reading about this or experienced about a lot of stuff in our life that is considered paranormal or fringe, we realize like it's all operating within this realm that, that you just mentioned. It's all happening. It doesn't mean it's the same person or being or entity, but there's something that opens up in people that allows them to see multiple realities and multiple entities at the same time, even if they're different entities. And I hope that made sense, because
Absolutely. One other thing, if I still have a minute, is
sure.
I'd like to plug MUFON a little bit. MUFON is the Mutual UFO Network. We're the largest and oldest organization studying the topic. We've got 7,000 plus members all over the world. We have 700 and something active field investigators. But it really is the community for people that are interested in the subject. You can join for next to nothing. You get all kinds of benefits. There's local events that happen in your area. MUFON has its own laboratories, its own lobbying effort in New York. In Washington, D.C. We have our own investigators that go out and do things. We have our own TV network. But, if you care about the UFO topic, consider joining MUFON. We have a whole team dedicated to experiencers. We have the experiencer resource team, where if you are an experiencer and you're a MUFON member, you're going to have all kinds of people you could talk to about it that won't judge you, that understand what it's all about. You're going to have access to a whole library of information, and you're going to have access to other people that are going through the same thing you are. And so it's a really cool community. You can join for as little as $40 a year. The 119 one gets you access to live streams and all kinds of really great stuff. But if you care about the UFO topic, you should definitely join MUFON. We say join MUFON, find your friends, and that's kind of what it's about.
Very cool. Yeah, I've heard. Obviously, MUFON has a lot of wonderful history in the topic. And I think this is a final question. Barry just threw it in at the last minute. Have you spoken with anybody who's backed up Bob Lazar's story?
There are such people, but I haven't personally spoken with them. That's kind of Jeremy Corbell's doing a lot of that work, and I would imagine that if there was going to be more people that came out, they'd go to him. But I think that Lazar is basically telling the truth. There's things about his story that people have attacked, but I find the skeleton of it to be credible. I think that he was brought in to take a look at this stuff, and he saw something that he can't explain, and it makes sense to me, especially with everything else that we know.
Right. It's like the more we learn, the more Bob Lazar seems legit. I feel like the more stuff that comes out, you're like, if you're not like a Bob person, because some people are just, they like to pick sides, and people,
Yeah.
The more things that are coming out, like, from the government and from other things coming into our awareness, it's just like, maybe Bob, he said that, and now the truth is coming out about it. so
Yeah, I mean, have craft, and have we been running a reverse engineering program, and et cetera, et cetera? I totally think that that's true. Obviously, I just made a movie about it. And so whether it's Bob specifically or similar stories and similar situations, that all of that stuff has been going on. I'm 100% convinced.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And I've been convinced for a while too. And you've talked to a lot of people. So if I'm convinced just from watching shows like documentaries like yours and other great ones out there, then if you've actually talked to the people face to face, I'm sure it adds just that much more to the conversation and to the knowing that this is happening. And this is happening, people. So if you're still laughing and making jokes about it, you're going to get a very quick awakening when more and more of this gets released in the upcoming years.
And I invite you to watch the movie. It lays out a very coherent, intelligent, reasonable case. It's not like, oh, hey, you should believe this because I'm saying it. I'm giving you guys evidence.
So go watch Accidental Truth, guys. His website is linked in the description, and that should take you everywhere. We have the actual Amazon link in the chat for you to go watch. It's going to be Friday night tomorrow, so maybe you can make a little movie night of it with the family. Make your kids watch the
so I'm not hard you can email me at ronjamescontact@gmail and tell me what you think of the film. I listen to everybody, even if you love it, don't.
Well, there you go. Reach out to him. He's a nice guy, and I'm sure he'll get back to you. Be respectful, of course. And thank you so much, Ron. Hang out for a minute after I end the broadcast. I want to say thank you to everybody that joined live, listening now or later, on audio only. Leave all your feedback, share, like, subscribe. There we go. It came out in one sentence. Usually I have to think about it. But have a great weekend, everybody. And I hope to see you. I'm doing shows once a month now because it's just easier for me with the kids being on summer break, and it gives me more time to prepare and read into the topics. So I will see everybody next month. We should have another UAP book club coming up probably in August. And enjoy the rest of your week. Bye.
Thank you.